Your objective for lesson 1 is I will collect and organize data. So we are moving on to module 6, and this is a really short module, but it's got a lot of good lessons in it. We're going to be looking at a lot of data. You're going to be collecting some data. You're going to be making some graphs, and then you're going to be measuring different objects with your ruler and making some more graphs based on what you measured. So there's a lot that's covered in this module, but it's covered in a really short amount of time, so you've got to make sure that you really pay attention to each lesson in this module and follow along with each lesson in this module. Okay, so for the first part of the concept development, you are going to be collecting data. So you will be going around the room and asking 15 people, not everybody in the whole class, but 15 people, what their favorite color is. And I've listed the colors on the screen. We have green, yellow, red, blue, and orange. You're going to actually be using part of your problem set to keep track of the students' favorite colors that you ask. I've also provided a student name list for you, so that way you can mark off their names once you've asked them, and that way you can also keep track of when you have asked 15 students total. So if you notice the red bold words in here, those are some good vocabulary words to just keep in mind for this module, the word data and then the word survey, and you both of those words you should be familiar with or you've heard of them before. So you're going to survey each person and ask them their favorite color. But before you start surveying each person, I want you to think of how you're going to keep track of that data in an organized way whenever you're asking someone their favorite color. How are you going to mark down their favorite color? Are you going to write green next to someone's name if they say green is their favorite color? If you have a chart that you're going to put this in, which you will have a chart because it's in your problem set, how are you going to keep track of this data in your problem set whenever you go around and ask people their favorite color? The best way whenever we're surveying people or we're taking data or collecting information, we always use tally marks. So that's the easiest way, and you can see up at the top that I have 4 tally marks, and then down here at the bottom I have 5 tally marks. So why would it be easier to make tally marks that are in groups of 5 instead of just making tally marks that are all 1 tally mark? How does that make it easier for you whenever you are counting all of that data? Well, if I have all of my tally marks just in groups of 1s, then I'm just going to have to keep counting by 1s. But if I have my tally marks in groups of 5, then that shows me that I can skip count by 5s, and we know that skip counting by 5s is a lot easier than counting by 1s. So I took a picture right here of the part of your problem set that you're going to need for this lesson. This is the chart. It has the colors right here to the left, and then right here it says number of students. So in these blank spaces next to each number, that's where you're going to put your tally marks for the students that like those colors. Before you start surveying 15 students in the room, I do want you to go ahead and put a tally mark next to your favorite color on the chart. Once you have put down your favorite color on the chart, just take a few minutes, don't take that long of a time, and go ask 15 of your classmates what their favorite color is, and make sure that you record their answer with a tally mark next to their favorite color on your chart, and make sure you're marking off their name from the class list so that way you are keeping track of who you asked and know whenever you've asked 15. So take a few minutes to do this part of the problem set. If you don't want to have to carry your binder around with you, you don't have to carry your binder around. You can take this paper out of your binder and then come back and put it in there. So whenever you have asked 15 people and you're ready to move on, you can push play on the video. Okay, your tally chart probably doesn't look like this, and mine doesn't even have tallies on it. I went ahead and just put numbers on mine, because even if I did have tallies, let's say I had some tallies already on my chart, I would probably go ahead anyways and write the number next to them, just because whenever I have tallies or whenever I'm taking any type of data, I like to see what I have with my data and then write the numbers next to them. So it might be a good idea for you to go ahead and next to your tally marks actually write how much those tally marks represent on your paper. Because once you have that finished, we're going to be ready to answer some questions based on your tally chart. And this is also on your problem set, and this is what it looks like right here. So number 2 says use the tally chart to answer the following questions. How many students chose orange as their favorite color? When you're looking at my tally chart, I have one student. I have no idea what your tally chart looks like. So based on your chart, write down how many students chose orange as their favorite color. B says how many students chose yellow. Whenever I'm looking at my chart, I have 2 students that chose yellow. So make sure you're writing down based on your chart how many students chose yellow. Next question says which color did students choose the most? And then it says how many students chose that color. So I'm looking for the color that has the most votes, and that would be red, and it had 5 students that chose that color. And then the next question says which color did students choose the least and how many chose it? So the least amount of people chose orange, and only 1 student chose that color. If you need to push pause at any point in this, please make sure you're doing that so you can write down your answers and then keep up with me at the same time. E says, what is the difference between the number of students in C and D? And I want you to pay attention when you see the word difference in the sentence, you should be thinking of subtraction. So we're thinking of subtracting the students that were in C and D. And then it says to write a number sentence to show your thinking. So when I look at C, I had 5 students that chose red, so I'm going to put 5, and I'm going to take away the students that chose orange. So whenever I take 5 and I take 1 away from it, I know that that's equal to 4. So the difference between the numbers that were in part C and part D was just 4. And now F says write an equation to show the total number of students surveyed on this chart. So we know already that we asked 15 students how many or what their favorite color was. So we know that the total amount of students that we surveyed was 15 students. So just keep in mind that some of your answers on your problem set for part 2 may not look exactly like mine, and your tally chart may not look exactly like mine either. We do know for a fact that problem F, we will definitely have the same answer because only 15 students were surveyed by you. So now we're going to move on with the problem set, but I'm going to show you a few different things before you actually do the next part of the problem set. So this is what the next part of the problem set looks like. It's another chart, but we are representing the students that you surveyed a different way than using the tally marks. So you see on your paper that in this chart for part A, or if you don't see it, turn to the page in your problem set so you're looking at the same thing I am right now. But up at the bottom, it says each heart represents 1 student. So you're going to do this just like your tally chart, except you're going to use hearts instead of tallies for how many chose green, yellow, red, blue, and orange. But in part B of this part of your problem set, it says each heart represents 2 students. So like if I had 4 students that chose green, I would put 2 hearts because 2 and 2 make 4. And then we'll talk about what or how we would make a heart if only 1 student chose it. So don't write anything down in your problem set for now. I want you to look up here on the screen. I've got 3 hearts right here. If each one of these hearts represent 2 students, like in this part of your problem set, then what is the value of these 3 hearts? I want you to write that down on your piece of paper in your binder. How many students would these 3 hearts represent? Okay, you should have wrote 6 students because you're just skip counting by twos. Here's 2, 4, 6. And then now underneath where you wrote 6 students, I want you to write a number sentence or a number equation to represent the value of my picture, where the number of hearts is the number of groups and the number of students is the size of each group. So if you've got 3 hearts, then that's how many groups you have. And you're thinking that since a heart represents 2 students, that in each group you have 2. So what equation would you write to go with this group of hearts and make sure that it's equal to 6? So get that written on your paper as well and push play when you're ready to check that. Okay, so I was looking for 3 times 2 equals 6, and that would have helped you also solve what these 3 hearts represent. Okay, so we're still not working quite yet on this chart because I want to know if I am working on this top part of the chart or even this bottom part of the chart. Well, actually not this top part, just part B. If I have, let's say, I can't remember what color it was. I think it was red, but I think I had red where 5 students chose red. So I can't skip count by twos and say red, or I can't skip count by twos and say 5, so I can't just draw regular sized hearts whenever I'm putting on the chart. So we have to think, how many hearts would we put on there for it to just show that I had 5 students that chose red, because 5 is an odd number. So we're going to have to use half of a heart. So if a whole heart equals 2, then what's the value of just this half of a heart? And if you're thinking, hopefully you were thinking that it was 1 student. So on your piece of paper, draw how many hearts I would have to put on my chart and that you may have to put on your chart where they're actually going to show me 5 students. If each heart represents 2 students, then how can I draw the hearts to show 5 students? So get that drawn on your paper and then push play. Okay, so you should have drawn 2 whole hearts because I know that this is 2 and this is 2 and 2 and 2 make 4. And then when I have half of a heart means 1 student. So when I have 4 plus this 1 right here, then that would give me 5. So that way if you have an odd number, you know that you can use half of a heart to show the odd number whenever you're going to be working on this chart in just a second on your problem set. Okay, so now we're about to move on to the problem set. This part of the problem set, these charts are actually called picture graphs because instead of using tally marks, we're actually using pictures, and in this case we're using hearts. Sometimes you'll see circles or smiley faces or stars, but these are called picture graphs because they are used with pictures. Okay, so if you don't have this out in front of you yet, make sure this is out in front of you and push play whenever you're ready if you don't have it ready. So I went ahead and I just put my chart right next to mine so I could look at it easily to make my chart. Yours should be right in front of you on your paper. And we're going to start on the top chart, which is chart A. And this one's easy because each heart just represents 1 student. So whenever I'm looking at green, I had 3 students, so I'm just going to draw 3 hearts. However many students you had that chose green, that's how many hearts you need to put. So what I'm going to let you do is I'm going to let you fill in yellow, red, blue, and orange with however many hearts you need, depending on what your chart looks like. And when you're ready to move on to part B in the next chart, I want you to push play. So as you can see, my chart with my hearts looks exactly like my tally chart or my number chart because I have it as numbers. Because on this chart, each heart represents 1 student. So whenever we move on down to the other chart, it's going to look a little bit different because these hearts represent 2 students. So I'm going to have some half hearts because not all of my numbers are even numbers. I do have some odd numbers, so that's going to make my hearts look a little bit different on this chart, and some of your hearts may look a little bit different too because you may not have all even numbers. So whenever I'm looking at green, I see that I had 3 students that chose that. So I'm going to take a heart away from my chart at the top, and then I'm going to take another heart, but I'm kind of going to just draw a line right down the middle of it to make it a half of a heart. And then I'm just going to have to put white over mine since I don't have a way to erase the heart. So I'm going to erase half of this heart because I know that a whole heart is equal to 2, and now I have half of a heart, which is equal to 1. So you're going to have to make sure on your chart that you're drawing regular sized hearts for 2 students, and the half-sized hearts are going to be for 1 student. So if you want to finish filling in this chart on your problem set and using your tally table to help you fill in this chart, and whenever you're ready to move on to the next problem, you may push play. Okay, so if you're looking at my chart and mine matches my tally chart, make sure that your chart or your picture graph matches your tally chart and that you have some half hearts where you need them to represent 1 student. Okay, now we're going to move on to the back side of the problem set, number 4. You're going to have to use the picture graph in problem 3B. So this picture graph that you just did at the bottom where you had to put some half hearts and each heart represents 2 students, you're going to just use this picture graph to work on problem 4. And the first question says, what does each heart represent? And all you have to do is look at the bottom part of your picture graph and it tells you each heart represents 2 students. So you are going to write that on your problem set. Each heart represents 2 students. That gave you the answer right there on your picture graph. Question B for number 4 says draw a picture and write a number sentence to show how to represent 3 students in your picture graph. So we know that if a heart is, 1 heart is equal to 2 students, then I know that I'm going to have 1 heart, but I just need 3 students, so I'm actually going to have half of another heart, and I know that this right here, 1 heart and a half of a heart, is equal to 3 students. And then it says write a number sentence to show how to represent that. So this is 2 hearts, or 2 students, plus 1 student, and it's equal to 3 students. We move on to part C for number 4. It says how many does each one of these hearts represent? Remember, each heart represents 2 students, so we're going to have to skip count by 2s on these hearts to figure out how many students would be all together with those hearts. Then it says write a number sentence to show how you know. So there could be a few number sentences, but I'm going to start by skip counting. This is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So from these hearts, there would be 14 students. A number sentence that I could put, because there's 7 groups, I could put that it was 7 times 2, because each heart is equal to 4, or equal to 2, and that's equal to 14. Or you could have went and you could have put 2 plus 2, and I'm just going to put dot, 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 because it could have gone on 7 different times. And then you would have had that that was equal to 14. So either one of these would work. You do not have to put both of them on your paper. I think that the best equation or number sentence to put for this part would have been 7 times 2, because that's easier to write than adding 2 7 times. And we know that it was equal to 14. Part D said, how many more hearts did you draw for the color that students chose the most than for the color that students chose the least? So we're going to have to look back at our chart to be able to answer this. So I know that the most students on this bottom chart chose red, and then the least amount of students chose orange. So orange had half of a heart and red had half of a heart, so those would actually cross each other out. Those are the same. So I actually had to draw 2 more whole hearts to make up the difference between red and orange. So to answer this question where it says how many more hearts did I have to draw, I had to draw 2 more hearts. You may not be putting what I'm putting right now because your chart is different than mine. Yours does not look exactly like mine does. So now it says write a number sentence to show the difference between the number of votes for the color that students chose the most and the color that students chose the least. And we already did this. I feel like we did this on the first page of the problem set. Let me go back and look. Yeah, on number 2, we had to actually write this number sentence between the most students that chose a color and the least amount of students that chose the color. So it's going to be the same equation that you put on the very first page of your problem set. So my equation will be 5 minus 1 equals 4. And that's all we have to do for this part of the problem set. And you're going to be ready to move on to the exit ticket. Whenever you're finished with the exit ticket, you need to bring that to me before you move on to the next lesson.